In the Impact segment tonight, undermining President Trump. Amid the chaos surrounding the Russia and wiretapping investigations, the White House is trying to highlight what the outgoing Obama administration may have done to undercut the Trump team.
I think that the revelations of Evelyn Farkas, who played a senior role in the Obama administration, going on the record to talk about how they politically used classified information is troubling. Day by day, more and more we are seeing that the substance of what we've been talking about continues to move exactly in the directions the president spoke about in terms of surveillance that occurred. And that should be very troubling.
For context, these are the remarks made by that Obama staffer earlier this month that Sean Spicer is referring to.
I had a fear that somehow that information would disappear with the senior people who left. So it would be hidden away in the bureaucracy, that the Trump folks, if they found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff dealing with Russians, that they would try to compromise those sources and methods, meaning we would no longer have access to that intelligence. So I became very worried because not enough was coming out into the open, and I knew that there was more. We have very good intelligence on Russia. So then I had talked to some of my former colleagues, and I knew that they were trying to also help get information to the Hill.
A lot going on today.
Yeah. That's why you have the leaking.
But in an interview with the Daily Caller yesterday, Farkas said that her comments have been misconstrued, stating that she was not in possession of intelligence about Trump or his advisors, and she did not share any documents with Congress. Joining us now with a reaction from Richmond, Virginia, Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt, and from Little Rock, Arkansas, General Wesley Clark, the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. So, General Clark, boiling it down, what Farkas admitted to was that Obama intelligence officials gathered information about Trump and conversations that he was having, squirreled those intelligence nuggets away, hiding them from the Trump transition team, and then had people leak them, illegally leak them, because it was classified, to members of the media and Democrats on Capitol Hill. Does that bother you?
Well, honestly, I don't know what happened. I mean, I heard that statement. I saw stuff come out, but I also saw a lot of other things that confused me during that period. During that period, I saw President-elect Trump. It was as though he was already president. He was making statements. He was telling what he was going to do. He was trying to basically brush off the findings of the intelligence community that Russia had interfered in the election. I mean, that's what was stated. And so I just think it's one of those ugly periods in a transition of presidential administrations. I think we ought to move on and put it behind us and look into the future. I mean, President Trump has got some remarkable initiatives underway. Some of them are very promising. I'm really excited about the National Association of Manufacturers saying that their sentiment is much higher, that they're going to invest more and create new jobs. I know foreign countries are going to invest here. I think that's all great. But I do think it's incumbent upon the American people and the Congress and the executive branch and the Federal Bureau of Investigation to get to the bottom of Russia's interference in the election, because that's something that's unprecedented.
Yes.
Never happened before.
In a way.
And we need to know what happened, because I
want to know what happened too, and I think everybody wants to know what happened, but right now it looks like there's a lot of innuendo floating around. It's pretty irresponsible. And I would also agree that it was an ugly period, that transition, because you had former administration officials actively undermining a president-elect. Charlie, there seems to be more and more evidence piling up day after day that there was an aggressive campaign to undermine the president-elect. You've seen it in the New York Times. You've seen it by Farkas, this woman on MSNBC. The leaks that have come out. There's a mounting evidence that this is happening. At what point does it become, you know what, this is the story now, not so-called weird connections between Trump and Russia?
In the current media environment, I don't know that it ever that ever occurs. But it is truly amazing because, as we've pointed out, there are all of these unanswered questions. In fact, they haven't even been asked yet about the efforts to undermine the incoming the transition team and the incoming new president. if indeed, and there is evidence to suggest that it has happened, look, see Mike Flynn, if in fact that is what happened, all of this business about Russian connections, murky connections that, by the way, have been exhaustively researched and investigated for months now, we now know, none of that pales in comparison to the idea that you have the most powerful espionage assets of the United States government being used by an administration to spy on a political opponent before, during, and after that political opponent wins the presidency. That is like on the level of constitutional crisis.
Right.
Which I think is a big reason why we have seen so much sort of unusual activity with Devin Nunes going to the White House, going to the White House to see things, going to the White House to brief the president. It's because we've never been here before. And anybody who has seen movies like the Edward Snowden movie, about all the massive collection that goes on, anybody who has the slightest concern about that, they do care about this. And they care about that a whole lot more than they care about Russian connections,
right.
Because this has to do with the integrity of our intelligence community and the ability of us to not be spied on by our own government.
It's not just about the integrity of the election, which we know now was not rigged in Trump's favor by the Russians. It's about the abuse of power potentially by an administration against an incoming administration. General, real quick, just to wrap this up, the motivation, do you think if indeed this did happen, is this just Obama officials caught by surprise at the Trump victory and trying to salvage his legacy, knowing they're shut out of power in the House, the Senate, and the White House? I mean, that's got to be the motivation if you were to speculate.
There are so many things that you and have covered here that it's really difficult to take it apart. But let's put it this way. First of all, the Russia connection has not been exhaustively investigated. Secondly, that would be a constitutional crisis if we had an election system that a foreign power could come in and influence effectively. That has not yet been exhaustively run down. Every transition has its rough spots, and every transition is different than the other. I remember in the 1980 transition, there were concerns that Ronald Reagan was undercutting the effort to get the hostages out of Iran. But here's what's different about this transition. President-elect Trump said he didn't trust the intelligence community. And so naturally,
well, I mean, General, would you trust the intelligence community if they were potentially unmasking your associates and then leaking things to the mainstream media? I wouldn't trust them.
First of all,
listen, General and Charlie.
The Washington Times has lived off the leaks from the intelligence community.
Okay, but so has the New York Times and so has the Washington Post. And that's why they don't care about these leaks, because they're making money off of them.
For the intelligence community.
I know.
So I believe in the men and women who serve our country.
I do too, but you have to admit,
we need to get to the bottom of the Russian connection first.
Fishy going on. General Charlie, thank you very much.
I agree.
Up next.